Welcome to the Dinnernet with Mark and Meg, the only podcast that teaches Edgar's kids how to swear.
Finally. Today on the podcast, we have Edgar D'Souza, food writer and impresario behind the Seattle Pop-Ups Instagram account, finally revealed. What's up, Edgar?
All good. I'm just getting back from LA where I ate a bunch of overpriced, shitty theme park food.
The worst? What's the worst thing you ate? At which theme park?
Oh, Universal Studios.
Okay, the worst of the food.
The worst of the food.
What was the worst shitty thing you ate at Universal Studios?
I mean, they fucked up a simple hot dog.
Hot dogs?
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, how do you fuck up a hot dog?
That's what I was going to ask. How do you?
Only Hollywood knows. Yeah, what they put on
Hollywood
it.
knows.
It's a Hollywood
No,
trick.
they put nothing on it, but I think the bread was like steamed and crusty at the same time, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Wow. And
My kids enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's kid food.
It's
Yeah.
good food.
Were they like $14 each?
Something like that.
Close.
Yeah, I think it was that.
Nice.
Did you eat anything good in LA, I hope?
Yeah, we found pretty decent food at Thai Town in East Hollywood.
Oh, great.
Some delicious place.
Nice.
A place called Arun Pear, which is like a mainstay of the Thai scene there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty good Thai sausage, like Isan style sausage and stuff. It was delicious.
We've got some background noise here.
Yeah, it'll happen.
You were saying earlier you had Armenian food also?
Oh yeah, and we tried some Armenian food as well, which is like just missing out here. right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so jealous and furiously pissed that we don't have any Armenian food whatsoever.
And LA has an entire
they
district.
have all of it. Yeah. They have an entire district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
next
what was
time I'm
cool
there.
was, and I never knew this about Armenian food was, or at least the Armenian scene in LA was, there's a lot of Lebanese influences as well.
Okay.
So there's more familiar Lebanese food like pita and hummus and all of that stuff.
Okay.
But then you'd find places where they'd veer into like deep cuts into
Yeah.
Armenian food.
Yeah.
The
So that
last
was
time
cool.
I was in LA and I wanted Armenian food, I was looking for kinkali, which is those
Right.
Georgian dumplings I've talked about before, and I can only
Which
find
you
them
can't
at
stop
Armenian
talking about.
spots. I can't. I have a T-shirt that has kinkali on it. It's in my stranger author profile. I'm wearing the kinkali shirt, but you can find them at Armenian spots in LA.
Yeah. What's another Armenian deep cut you love?
Oh, I don't think this is Armenian though. I think it was on the Lebanese side, sujuk, right, which is sausage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which was delicious, and they flambéed it with, I think it was like sambuca that they
Hell yeah.
that they lit on fire to flambe it stable side, which was a little
Killer.
gimmicky. But my son thought that was sauce, so he dipped a piece of pita into the sambuca, and it was hilarious.
So they're learning to drink and swear in the same week.
Amazing.
Mark, how was your weekend?
It was good. I worked a lot, which by
Yeah.
which I mean I wrote a lot.
Oh, so your job is writing? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, must be nice.
Right. It was kind of like that all day kind of writing. Though,
Sure.
you wake up and you're just, But I did make it over to Bainbridge Island, and
Good.
I ate at Seabird, which
Oh,
was
who owns Seabird?
incredible. Yeah.
Who owns
It's
that
a,
place?
It's a Brendan McGill joint.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah, I had a
Familiar.
really, really great meal over there. We'll talk about that later.
We'll chat about it. Nice.
Yeah. What did you do this week?
I worked a lot. I worked till 2 a.m. last night writing about local artist Tarika Waters,
Nice.
who I am fascinated by.
Yeah.
And I also worked on my drumlin story. I'm like, what did I write? I wrote 2 stories yesterday. I made a lot of money. And then Saturday I went to a wedding at 210 Washington, just in Pioneer Square, which I was trying not to ruin the wedding by telling everyone the building was once owned by Friedrich Trump, Donald Trump's
Oh
grandfather.
boy. Yeah.
And I learned that when Trump first became president, and every time I go by that building, I'd scowl at it and be like, that's the legacy. So I got to see the inside of that.
Friedrich.
Fucking Friedrich. He owned a restaurant there called The Dairy, apparently in like
Really?
The Dairy?
1891. Yeah.
Okay.
And he bought a restaurant called the Poodle Dog, which was not the same one that's in Fife now. It was just a coincidence.
Oh.
But the wedding that I went to was lovely. It was Seattle internet royalty, Alethea and Asa. If you were extremely online in the early aughts and late 90s, as I was, and you lived here, we're all on LiveJournal. So if you
It's
were,
true.
Asa and Alethea, they finally got married after 19 years.
God damn.
And the wedding was catered by Jackalope Cantina because Asa works for Jack's Barbecue.
Yeah, rad.
And got his wedding crashed by Jack Timmons as well. So it was restaurant-y.
Yeah, have you been to Jackalope?
No, I've never been.
I kind of love it. It's Tex-Mex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight up great Tex-Mex
Have
too.
you been?
Yeah, I
Edgar?
have.
Yeah.
Again, my kids love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was pretty good. And you're right. I mean, it does a decent version of Tex-Mex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were enchiladas and potato tacos, like tacos dorados, and
Yeah.
good salads.
It's the type of cuisine that's been brutalized by corporate chains, but it kind of reminds you that just because a corporate chain co-opted something, it doesn't mean that the original thing is bad.
Right.
The original thing is actually very great. And when someone does it well, it kicks ass.
That's a good point. Like Starbucks. Coffee could be good, but Starbucks
Exactly.
is disgusting. People just don't know. They're like, ugh, coffee's ruined now. No, it used to be good.
Yeah.
They brought it back.
There's lots of examples of that.
All right. Well,
Anyway.
Edgar, thank you for joining us. We're happy to see you. We're happy to unmask you.
Oh my goodness.
So many people will say, "Oh, I love Seattle pop-ups," but who runs it? Like,
Is it a bot?
It's
Yeah,
Are
right.
you a bot, a living bot sitting
been asked
before
that.
us? Have you really?
Yeah, seriously. Somebody at a pop-up that I went to, and they hadn't heard of me, and I went and got my stuff, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then, how did you hear about us? I'm like, I run this page. And they're like, oh, that's a real person. I'm like, yeah.
They
I
thought
thought
you
it
were-
was a bot.
Thought you were a
Is-
chat GPT.
Is that anonymity intentional or?
It is. It very much is.
Yeah.
Right? For a few reasons. I don't blog. I'm not a blogger or a vlogger kind of thing. Although I was in LiveJournal in the early.
Were you really?
aughts, yeah.
Were we friends?
No.
No.
No. But yeah, the anonymity, right? So, not a vlogger, not an influencer kind of person. I think the page exists as a amplifier, as a megaphone for
Yeah.
the Seattle independent chefs and bakers. And I think if I put my name to it, it kind of takes away from the mission.
Do you feel like you'd become an influencer that way, or are you
Yeah,
trying
I think
to?
so. I'm trying hard to avoid that,
Yeah.
although this podcast isn't helping.
Well, I think that there's some value in just kind of pointing out that there's a person behind this, and you do really, really important, great work, and I think
Thank
that
you.
to some degree you should be recognized for that. And not to say that this podcast is a giant, prestigious form of recognition.
Right now,
but,
finally, you've made it to the big time.
Yeah. But
But-
it's a start.
Yeah.
yeah, and you're a person that is worth knowing.
Very frequently, we get asked who you are. Like if the Seattle Pop-Ups name gets mentioned, we'll be like, "Oh, it's on Seattle Pop-Ups," and they'll be like, "Who is that?" So I think people will be excited to know.
That is interesting. I'm
Ha-
happy to be here.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that? Like you were involved, you're a food writer, yeah?
Yeah, but I think the food writing came after
Okay.
the Seattle pop-up. So
The interest
way
came
this
first.
started was during the pandemic. We as my family, my kids and
Mm-hmm.
wife and I, we saw a lot of the people who work in restaurants, like cooks and bakers, out of work and on Instagram trying to raise money for rent, right? They were selling food out of their cars and parking lots and that kind of stuff. And the opposite end of that was we were very comfy working from home, kids doing remote school at that point in time. And I just couldn't comprehend this dichotomy, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And at the same time, I wanted my kids to explore, expand their culinary horizons as well. So these two things came together. We started putting together, and we, as my kids, are heavily involved in this. Even now,
They are?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if the Canva backgrounds suck, blame me only partially.
Really?
Yeah, so we started putting together an Excel sheet, and it still is an Excel sheet of every pop-up, what kind of food they did, and where they were going to be next. So we had this running list of places we wanted to try. And then a couple of months in, we just thought that there might be other people that would use this. So I started fired up Canva, picked a background, put a bunch of things in, and quite honestly, I didn't expect anything to come out of it.
Really?
But here's where we are now,
Yeah.
right?
And that was Valentine's Day of 2022?
That was Valentine's Day of
Yeah.
2022. Also, my daughter's 8th birthday.
8th birthday.
Yeah, so since then, though, I think what's happened is it's become a few things, right? It's been so there's a weekend roundup that I try to put together of pop-ups happening that weekend. I try to announce new pop-ups when a chef or a baker launches a new pop-up. Try to tell their story there because the weekend is just a roundup of what's happening that weekend, and I can't tell an entire story in that space. In addition to that, whenever there are ticketed events or like RSVP'd events, I try to announce them when they drop. And then last, I've tried to. There are impulsive eaters who like wake up and say, "Hey, where do I want to eat today?"
Yeah.
So that's day off pop-ups, especially on weekdays and stuff like something cool is happening today, that kind of stuff. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's right. It's such a great resource. And you update it on a certain day every week, right?
I try to stick to Fridays, but Universal had the best of me this Friday.
Sure.
So because you're so well versed on all of the different pop-ups, do you feel like a special emotion when you see, for example, Lennox turn into a brick and mortar or something like that?
Oh, 100%. It definitely feels fulfilling.
Yeah.
When folks go ahead and like, make it to the big league or
Yeah.
graduate, so to speak, from
Right.
being I did this once a month, and now it's a residency, like Chamarican at the Wash.
Great example,
It feels really
I
special.
didn't get
to
up
see.
there this week.
I know.
Damn it.
I meant to too.
Have you been to Chamarican?
I've not been to ever since they've been here, but
Okay.
when they were a stall, I tried them out.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the top of my list.
I feel like we're the official podcast of Chamarican right now.
I know.
It's like the third week in a row. We're like, fuck.
Yeah.
We were the official podcast of Lil Woody's for a couple of weeks.
That's true. Yeah.
Is it good?
Oh, it is delicious. Yeah.
I'm sure that
don't
it
miss.
is.
No doubt. Yeah. Jose was speaking very highly of it. And when Jose speaks highly of something, I feel like, all
That's right.
It's going to slap.
The president of pop-ups.
The president. Well, Edgar, have you recognized any trends that have emerged in pop-ups over the last few years or maybe recently?
Yeah, I think the pandemic accelerated multiple forms of pop-uppery, so to speak, right? And one of the biggest trends there, I think it started prior to the pandemic but accelerated during, was the entire Asian baking scene.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
American Asian baking
Yeah,
scene,
yeah.
right? I think Flower Box was
Oh, yeah.
one of those like pivotal moments in. That was one of the first places where you'd see lines out of the door, which you probably see
Yeah.
them even today at each and every one of their pop-ups. It was also one of those where it was proudly, boldly Asian
Yeah.
flavors and things done with like perfection. This wasn't a food truck at the back of a
Right.
gas station kind of situation, right? So I think that was one of the moments that was like a pivotal moment to the entire scene. And then during the pandemic, we saw a ton of baker pop-ups come up as well, right?
Yeah.
A few reasons for that, right? One is it's easier legally to navigate the entire legalities around a pop-up, which probably a whole other episode for itself.
Yeah, right.
About what that looks like with the King County Health Department and so on. The second thing was this happened around the same time when there was a large API voices that accelerated or amplified the pop-up scene as well. So yeah, I think the baking scene is hot right now and will continue to be. That's one, and then the adjacent to that, I think, is the Asian and American Asian food scene as well on the pop-up side.
You bring up a point that I never considered, to my surprise, which is that if you're cooking live, it's way more of a pain in the ass than if you've baked it at home and you've got it all wrapped up. Like, duh.
Yeah, it's
Obviously.
considered, and like legality-wise, it's packaged food,
Right.
less hazardous, easier to
Totally.
pop up. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. There's.
Right. Wow. I'm revealing myself as someone who's never worked in a kitchen, never worked at a food
Me neither.
stall. Oh, have you
haven't
never?
either?
Yeah.
I've never yet, but I might.
You're just a white collar elite like me.
A white collar elite, yeah.
What do you do, by the way? Just curious.
I work in tech.
In tech. You're a
yeah.
tech guy.
Interestingly, now my latest job, I build commerce and like payment solutions for small businesses.
Oh, cool.
So it somehow relates to
It's
my
linked.
entire
Yeah.
small business thing.
Absolutely.
Are there any trends you see emerging that might not be recognizable to someone that doesn't cover pop-ups as intimately as you do?
I think we're going to see a reemergence, or we're starting to see the reemergence of the supper club kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah. I see that too.
scene, so to speak. right? I think it's increasingly important, and that's why it's coming as well in an environment where like everything around us is shitty kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
The few things that we can control are what we eat and who we eat with, right?
Yeah.
So supper clubs where you get into small, intimate gatherings, probably in somebody's home or some similar situation, right? 8 people around the table, mostly strangers, a chef going ahead and putting their heart out there and being bold and taking chances with really interesting food is probably what we'll see more of in the next year or so.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I think it's also just a craving for that intimacy, meeting strangers, or wanting. I'm imagining it from the chef's perspective and them being like, I know all these cool people. I like to cook. Let's put them all in the same room and get them to be friends with each other.
Right.
That's the idea anyway. I don't know if that always works. I don't know what the success rate is on that. But
No, I mean, I think that the ones that have emerged are persisting, so there must be
I
good
think
amount
what
of
Jose
success.
Garzon does with the Stopless Tapas thing
Absolutely.
is absolutely on that.
have you
right?
been?
Yes, I did. I missed this week's one, but the previous one where he collaborated with Lisa B. So
Yeah.
both of
Yeah.
the previous guests,
Wonderful.
right? Lisa did a papaya salad with this beef jerky, which
Oh,
I still
nice.
dream about.
Note to self.
Yeah, really. That's going to be one to try for sure. And then, of course, there's Pop Pop with the.
Oh yeah,
Pizza.
they just finished their
That's sort of
residency at the W, which I heard had a giant fire yesterday.
Oh,
So
seriously?
I'm glad it didn't happen while they were having their residency.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but the photos look great, and people were, the influencers were out making cute little videos. I shared one of them, and I was like, "Yay! These other people like the thing that I like. Like
Yeah.
they're trying it and they're into it. They're going."
Uh huh.
Yeah, it seemed enthusiastic. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah,
It's good to see.
that was a fun party. I mentioned this when Brian was on the show, but I met a lot of people at the Pop Pop that I went to,
Yeah.
who I talk to now.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and the all influencers or something, or no?
No, the woman that I met, who I was talking to yesterday, worked for Little Caesars Pizza corporate.
Oh, wow.
And she
Whoa.
just likes pizza, right? So she came with her husband, and her husband was into curling. Steven made a curling joke, and he was like, "Oh, I'm actually a curler." And I was like, "What?" And they were very interesting to us. So we chatted with them for I don't know, just enjoyed the folks that we met.
Whoa. So Stephen made a curling joke out of nowhere and it just
Yeah. And
happened to be-
randomly, this woman who I had been talking to, her husband's like, "Oh, I actually curl." And we were like, "Do you?" Because there's a curling rink up in
Yes.
like
On,
what
like,
is that,
130th.
Licton Springs, and
really?
we knew that there was a bar inside of the curling rink, and we were always like, "What if we went to the curling bar? That would be cool." And we never went because, of course, you have to be a member. So we're like,
Right.
"What's the bar like?" Like immediately we asked
Yeah.
this dude.
When he said a curling rink up, I'm like, Canada?
Yeah, up in Canada,
Yeah.
the Canada
right.
of Seattle.
There's a definite curling paradox up there because we
Yeah.
only have one curling rink, but you have to be a member to go there. So how do
Yeah.
you learn to curl enough to want to be a member?
Yeah, really, you have to. It's like a
But
specially
now,
ticketed party. It's
Yeah,
like
so-
a sex party. You have to have someone vouch for you.
Someone needs to create a curling pop-up somewhere at a
That's right.
bowling,
So you
bowling
can
alley.
try it.
Yeah.
All of this said, fascinating folks who I met, and those and others at the Pop Pop event that I went to.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with that.
So-
It's, you end up meeting people. It's cool.
Yeah, I advocate going to.
I think that extends to any kinds of pop-ups, right?
Yeah.
While pop-up pizza is definitely pricier,
Yeah.
right,
For sure.
than most. Even at regular pop-ups, even when Hey Bagel, before they landed their spot. By the way, have we reached peak bagel?
Yeah, God.
It's
Are we
You went to
peaked?
Backyard, right?
yes, I did. I'm gonna say we haven't yet reached
Oh, we
peak
haven't
bagel.
yet.
We are. I think we're getting there.
Okay.
Oh.
The thing is that we're only just now getting bagel places that will bake them fresh.
Right.
You know,
and serve them hot.
Yeah, so that's what they do. That's what Backyard Bagel does. That's what Hey Bagel does. I think Mount Bagel does that too.
Kind of.
Yeah, but that's the only three.
Yeah.
Everyone else has done it the kind of Pacific Northwest way, which is just bake them all in the morning, and then when you run out, you're done for the day.
Right.
And I get why that's the case because
Right.
there isn't that massive influx of people. You have to have the line, and also bagels are hard to make. They're it's physical work. So I get it, but I think we will reach peak bagel when we have more places that are baking them fresh.
We don't have Montreal style either. That super chewy Montreal style.
El Tana claims to be
Yeah.
Montreal
Oh,
style,
really?
but
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it true? I'm not disqualifying them. I didn't know that.
I've been
Yeah.
to Montreal, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I have, but I haven't eaten a ton of bagels.
well, between the
We
three
should
of
compare.
us. Yeah,
But isn't it interesting that all three of the bagel places all came up as pop-ups? Like
Yeah.
Brown Bagel, Hey Bagel,
Yeah.
and Backyard or
And
Aaron's
Backyard.
Bagels, as
Yeah.
they were earlier, right? I think that's interesting because maybe we wouldn't have known if, or they wouldn't have known if baking bagels fresh is sustainable
Right.
and a good business if they didn't go that route. Right?
I should also shout out Howdy Bagel, which serves Tacoma-style bagels.
Yeah.
Which
which they,
already started
They
popping
did
up
at
here,
farmers
right?
markets,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
they call it Tacoma-style bagels because they source everything from Pierce County.
I love
or
it.
everything that they
It's
can.
amazing.
So they're like, it's not New York style. Sorry. Like, we wouldn't use the same stuff.
Yeah.
We don't have the magical New York water that you guys claim makes the bagel taste better. So
We have Tacoma water.
we have
Yeah.
Tacoma water.
I love that.
Rainwater bagels.
That kicks ass.
Yeah.
Tacoma, I'm all about Tacoma style bagels.
Come down to Tacoma on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Market always ends up in Tacoma when they're closed.
It's so true. It's
Yeah.
eluded me, and it's been my fault. It's been sort of poor due diligence on my part. Like I'll go on a Monday and be like, I'm going to go to Howdy Bagel, and then
Howdy
it's like,
Bagel. Oh,
this-
no, there's no
yeah,
Howdy.
they're not open.
If folks listening have not been to Howdy Bagel, bagels phenomenal, delicious permutations of bagels. They also have like a wall of just interesting products like olive
Yeah.
oil and capers and smoked trout in a tin. And they sell seeds. They sell all kinds of
Seeds?
things.
You can grow
They
your own
just have all
bagels.
kinds of like fascinating little pickled pepperoncinis and sundries, I guess is what you would call
Yeah.
them. And they're all really lovely. And every time I get one, I got like a fig rosemary jam and it was so good. And, it's like $10 or something, but it's always a fascinating little delightful sundry to pick up there.
Well, Maggie, should we do some news?
We should.
We
really should do some news.
we've got quite a
Actually,
few.
before you start the news, can I open my LaCroix because it's going to be loud? I'll let everyone listen. This is the
Jesus.
coveted Nicola LaCroix that is hard to find. Steven thinks this is disgusting. The cola flavored
Yeah.
LaCroix. Have you had it?
I have, yeah.
It is my favorite one and it's so hard to find. And I found it at PCC in Fremont yesterday. I'm very excited.
Yeah, the cola flavor is interesting because I love the idea of it and I don't mind it. I think I might be in between you two in opinions.
I love it.
Because it kind of suggests to me off-brand cola.
Really?
Which of course it would because it's
It
not.
is not the-
Yeah.
yeah.
and
RC
it's
vibes.
it's
Shasta vibes.
right. It totally has Shasta vibes. And then on top of that, it's not fully flavored and
Right.
and sweetened, so it feels a little watered down, but
Sorry. I got angry when you said my cola wasn't delicious.
So it tastes like diluted Shasta Cola.
but not in a bad way.
Mark, would you like a sip?
Yes, I would. I'm gonna
Put your
evaluate
mouth
this.
where your mouth is.
Yeah, I'm gonna
wanna
evaluate
taste
this
it.
empirically. This is kind of like that Wayne. This is like that Wayne's World moment where
Yeah.
it's like Advil, little, yellow, different.
Tell me what you think, honestly. So
I
refreshing.
want to try something.
Yeah.
please.
Okay. So here's what I like about it.
Yeah.
So cola flavor often, well, almost always includes cloves, right?
Right.
And so the clove flavor in this comes through in a very pleasant way. It's almost like
Yeah.
clove sparkling water.
It's like a gothic
It's Clove
cigarette.
LaCroix.
Yeah,
Right.
and in fact, overdoing it on the clove is where I think a lot of off-brand colas go wrong,
Okay.
because it's like the one part of Coca-Cola's formula that you're like, they has that, and it's not just cola nut, it's
Yeah.
clove too. Let's hit it,
Yeah.
But when you overdo it, then you kind of get it's too spicy, but not in like too hot spicy, but
Yeah.
like too warm spicy. But I think that's
It's good, right?
Yeah, I like
it tastes
it.
like a clove cigarette. It tastes like Gothamite at Rock
Yes.
Candy.
Yes, it is
Steven took a whiff of it and backed away from it. And he said, I just don't like the cola smell. And I was like, what? Like, the cola smell is the smell of America. Like, what do you mean? And he said, fascinatingly, he said, I grew up Mormon and we didn't grow up drinking cola. And so it's just a foreign flavor to me. And I was like, right. You didn't have it like pouring like a fountain in your household. He's like, yeah, I'm just not used to it. He drinks coffee by the gallon, but he hasn't adapted to the smell and taste of cola. So that was fair.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that the scent put him off.
Mm-hmm.
My theory about LaCroix, by the way, is that it is perfumed, not flavored. That's my conspiracy theory around LaCroix. That's how
I love LaCroix. My blood is LaCroix. I drink it constantly.
Okay, well, let's start with a Seattle classic is back fully. Wedgwood Broiler has been repaired, and they have brought back their full menu. Around September 16th, they had a fire. It damaged their whole kitchen pretty much, and they had to replace their grill, their fryer, and they thought they had it back up and running, but then they discovered that there was some damage with the hood, which is, terrible to have to deal with. And so they had been open with a limited menu while everything was getting replaced, and the repairs are finally complete. So if you go to Wedgwood Broiler now, you can have the whole pot roast, prime rib, meatloaf, mid-century experience that they've become famous for.
Mark, do you have the scoop on whether they're going away or not? Because there was a story about how the QFC was going to get torn down and they were going to go into the new QFC if it ever got built. But that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. The last news I heard about that was from about a year ago, and that project is going forward, apparently. I don't know that they have a shutdown date.
But they may still sojourn on in another... similarly located place.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their plan is, to be honest. It would be hard, I think, to transfer that vibe elsewhere. It's almost like Vito's that way,
That's what the bar manager at the Water Wheel said. She sort of laughed. I'm like, are you going to move into the bottom of the new condo? She's like, no. Why would we do that? Like, we don't have the budget, she said very beautifully, meaning we're not going to pay $10,000 a month.
Right. Yeah. Not to mention building out the sure to be utterly empty space that new construction bottom floors always are.
Yeah, it'll be an empty box.
I can't imagine the Wedgwood Broiler with glazed concrete floors, exposed ductwork,
and open ducts,
and then a fake plant wall that says like "What up, Wedgwood" in neon word art. Yeah,
do you remember when there used to be a suit of armor next to the door? They'll have it in like neon.
Oh my God. Yeah, there'll just be neon word art that says night vibes.
All of this is to say, if folks have not been to Wedgwood Broiler, you should hurry.
Yeah.
Because they're back open, but who knows for how long.
Exactly.
Heaven Sent Fried Chicken, owned by Ezel Stevens. Yeah. After he did a schism and left Ezel's. Heaven Sent now is closing. That's Lake City, yeah?
Lake City, that's the only one left.
The only one left. He had a few.
He did, yeah.
Renton too, right?
Yeah, I think there was one in Everett for a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one's the only one open right now, and
frequently deemed better than current Ezel's Chicken, which still bears his name but is not owned by him. So sort of a blow in the fried chicken scape.
Yeah, I think that we might be reaching a point of market correction with fried chicken, but
full saturation.
But that's not the correction I want. I want like the out of state chain to
I want to keep that one and maybe lose like Dave's or something.
Exactly.
Although in other fried chicken news, I understand that Spice Swallow's Columbia City location is going to try out deli-style fried chicken. And that's the city, not the delicatessen. The city of Delhi from March 4th through the 31st of March. Only Columbia City, Spice Swallow.
Okay, that's good to know.
What makes it deli style?
I don't know, man. You got to go and find out.
Yeah.
I can read the press release to you.
Yeah, tell us about deli-style fried chicken.
Inspired by the streets of Delhi, Spice Swallow will be serving Indian fried chicken. Growing up in Delhi, owners Uttam and Akanksha would sneak away to Jama Masjid to eat fried chicken that was spicy, tangy, and freshly fried to order. I don't know. Do we know anything about Jama Masjid? I think you commented earlier that that's a district.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mosque with a bunch of amazing food around it. But yeah, they're known for their grills and naan and all of that stuff in that area. But never had fried chicken there.
I liked it when you said, what is that? It turned out you knew way more than I did. We'll all go together. Let's all go.
It sounds good. I remember that Spice Wall during the shutdown, they did a chicken wing special and it slapped. It was so good. Yeah.
It was fried.
It was fried. I think it had some, like a little hint of garam masala in the batter, and they served it with this unbelievably great hot sauce on the side, like a chili paste kind of, maybe with like a hit of tamarind in there. It was a while ago, so I can't remember exactly.
You're describing it so dreamily,
But,
and like,
yeah,
you act like you know what the fuck you're talking about.
I think of it a lot, and so
Yeah.
now that I remember that, the idea of them doing fried chicken is
Okay.
extremely enticing.
You've sold it. That
Yeah.
PR release, I'm like, could be anything. Tangy, okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're going to put some flavors in there that are, not.
You're doing the
necessarily-
Italian hands. You can't
That
help
means it's
it.
real now.
I know. I wish I had a thing like that for being. What the fuck am I? British Isles and Dutch or whatever. We
Yeah.
don't do a thing.
You don't do the Dutch.
We don't have emotions in the Netherlands. We don't emote. I'm so jealous.
There's lots of smaller pieces of news. Tim's Tavern has reopened and added lunch hours from Thursday through Sunday.
Oh, awesome.
They've been closed for the first half of February over there in White Center to remodel and just kind of spruce up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now they're back and they are open at noon. Thursday through Sunday, according
cool.
to their Instagram.
The fun fact I always remember about Tim's is that it's owned by Mason Reed, who owns Beth's. And Mason told me that he cooked for bands on tour.
Yeah,
And many of them are vegan. So he's like, I offer a lot of vegan options.
true.
Because I had to learn how to do that. And I learned to cook really good vegan food that way. Because you just had to cook for your client, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
That's
imagining
in Georgetown.
White
No,
Center.
White Center.
White Center. So I'm imagining that Tim's also has lots of vegan options.
Yes,
Is
they
that
do.
correct?
They
yeah.
do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, they used to be located up real North Greenwood, so like on 105th.
Next to La Cabana.
Yeah, next
Yeah.
to La Cabana, and they had the kookiest, coolest open mic night.
Yeah.
There were just characters that came to that open mic night. It was in a smaller space, so I think it kind of had a certain sense of
It had a little crusty, like shittiness to it that I really enjoyed. Just
Yeah.
it wasn't updated, right? It was from the 1950s or something.
yeah. There was a dude who used to come to that mic, and his name was Lonesome Steve. That's what he called himself. And he was this like 70-year-old dude. He looked like imagine like a British Santa Claus, basically, but Lonesome Steve was American.
No such thing.
He'd get up there and he'd play like these 1930s ragtime,
Ooh.
like kind of early blues tunes on his acoustic guitar, and he would treat his 15 minutes like it was VH1 Storytellers. It was so fucking funny.
We should get a podcast. We should have him on.
He was great. He would just yarn and just talk about like, well, with this song I first heard, and you could sort of see the other musicians kind of seethe a little bit because he's going over his time, but he was kind of.
He was
he was
robbing
into it.
them.
And he was, he would always appear in various states of inebriation.
Oh, okay.
Lovely.
Yeah, great place. Now they're in White Center. It's a much bigger place. It's more of a venue type of atmosphere, but a very cool bar.
Any more news?
Yeah, we talked to Marcus Lolario over at Darkolino's.
Oh yeah, we both hung out with my friend Mark at Darkolino's the other day, and Marcus was there and told
Yeah.
us that the menu has been sort of like reimagined, realigned.
Yeah, like refocused a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that when you and I first learned of Darkolino's, we were maybe like a little bit confused at the idea of like, well, there's pasta and there's focaccia sandwiches.
And coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a bar and
And a shoe store.
yeah. And I mean, I love the idea of variety, but I think it
Yeah.
was a little bit hard to grab onto.
We didn't get what it was. And he'd be like, you should come hang out sometime with your laptop. And I'm like, don't you serve like pasta? Like, isn't it upscale? I don't understand.
Yeah.
So he's saying he casualified the menu and he dropped the prices a little bit just to sort of make it match the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a sort of crossover effect happening between the pastas they had on that menu and then mezzanotte, which is the
Right.
more upscale Italian place, and fantastic, by the way, in Georgetown.
That he also owns.
And I think that there wasn't enough of a difference in the perception between the pastas at Darkolino's more casual and
Interesting.
mezzanotte. So I think he's sort of aligned that with a more casual. I think he called it more Italian American.
Yeah, he did.
Which there's chicken parm on the menu now.
Yeah, it's like vodka sauce. Yeah.
and that fits in with the other thing too we were talking about earlier. Like, just because a corporation has co-opted the thing doesn't mean that doing the original thing well isn't good, right? So I am excited to try his chicken parmesan because I bet it's in that same category as Jackalope,
Yeah,
where it's
if it's as good as the focaccia there.
Yeah, focaccia is great. And then also Harbor City in the CID is closing down. They're announcing their closure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was reported by Vanishing Seattle, right?
Yeah.
They were citing an increase in the lease rate,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, their last day is the 28th of February, unfortunately. They do have a location in Tacoma, so you can still roll down to Tacoma
Yeah, that's good.
and eat their food. But yeah, more closures in the CID is always sad news.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Nope.
And pop-up news.
Yeah.
So one good, one bad, both about donuts. One is Sonrisa Donuts, which used to pop up around town, brioche donuts with Southeast Asian flavors, is moving out of the Seattle area to Eastern Washington.
Okay.
The owner, Jing, she bought a truck, and so now they're going to be a food truck, which
Okay.
is
Okay.
an interesting graduation or transition from like pop-up to truck. And a pop-up, a donut pop-up called Good Lazy, also brioche donuts with Asian flavors. Well, they have over 65 flavors that they rotate through.
Okay.
Just opened
65 different donuts.
different donuts that they keep rotating through. They opened a brick and mortar down the street from where I live in Issaquah.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Shall we move to the round table? So we
Let's
had
do it.
two topics that we were interested in covering in equal measure. And we'll start with the first, which is just the future of pop-ups and what we foresee happening.
Edgar, do you have any thoughts about the future?
Yeah, so a few things, right? One is, like we talked initially, the de-risking a food business before folks go into brick and mortar is becoming increasingly important.
Yeah.
Right. That's what landlords and lenders are looking for. Like, they don't want to lend to somebody they've never heard about or seen before.
Right.
So building out your customer base and dialing down your menu and your offering, etc., gets increasingly more important. So I think we'll see a lot more short-term pop-ups. Right, so these aren't necessarily folks that start off pop-ups and start off as pop-ups and then graduate, so to speak. But they've always intended to be a brick and mortar, but they do a short-term pop-up just to dial things down, build some reputation. So we'll see more restaurants starting like that, in my opinion.
Okay.
The second is we'll just see a broader range of formats. Right? So we talked about the bakery and the baking good trend. We'll see more of the supper club things. There's a ton of coffee pop-ups as well,
Right.
right? That are coming up that are pretty interesting.
Like Orange Goose is one.
Orange Goose
Yeah.
is pretty cool. That's pretty much that person's living room that you step into, which is amazing.
Cool.
And Bonhomie
Right.
Yeah.
in Pizza by Ruffin, they're doing really cool stuff. And I think there's also like products that we'll see as well. Like as folks are diving into the food industry, because that's like pop-ups are very early stage, right, in terms of business. Looking at other avenues and other revenue streams. So whether that's packaged goods or catering, and trying to figure out if you could build out a business not with that's dependent on foot traffic and a brick and mortar restaurant or a cafe, but building out, hey, there's a package like. If it's a coffee place, there's also coffee that is being sold out, like beans, like how Watson's Counter did, and so on. Right. So building out multiple revenue streams, and one of them could be pop-ups, and one of them could be a brick and mortar restaurant. I think we'd see a lot of those.
Okay.
So that's, I think, what I'm seeing mostly.
You touched on the risk that landlords don't want to take. They want to see that you've been able to sell your product. And it reminded me, as we were chatting before the show, you said we might want to touch on why everyone in Seattle is so risk averse. In fact, you were saying earlier that we had a lot of envy of Portland maybe 10 years ago because they had food carts and they were able to
we still do.
And to this day, we still do. And you're like, but now we have food carts.
Right.
We don't have pods the way that Portland does, but we were able to do that proving ground in the way that you describe it. You rightly pointed out that people are still really, really risk averse. And I wonder why that is. I'm sort of chewing on it as we were talking. Is it just because the rents are fucking insane?
I think it's very cost.
You can't afford it to take a risk?
I think so. I think the margins are just so narrow that you really got to hit.
Yeah.
And also, my thought, and my theory is that we are a town that has a little bit narrower of a palate and a willingness to try things that are outside of our comfort zone.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think the fried chicken thing, right? Like
They really do just hammer it into the ground.
It's
Yeah.
just such a chicken strip city in some ways, and I think
We are a
Chicken Strip City with featuring Edgar D'Souza. That's the name.
And I think there are lots of reasons for that. I think, it's hard to theorize on this without stereotyping too much, but I do think that the tech industry is a very utilitarian-minded demographic. I think it's a lot of people who really live to work, and a lot of people who I think if they could just pop a pill that would give them their nutrition, they would do it, right? And so it's really hard. I remember so well when South Lake Union was first getting built out with offices for tech workers. That was such a frontier for restaurateurs to go in and be like, oh, I'm going to try my like wildest idea here because there's a captive audience. This is going to come in after work.
Everyone has to eat lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then those uniformly tanked because there just wasn't the interest in it from the people who were nearby. And so I think that's a microcosm of, I think, a larger element across the city.
I say that all the time. A certain other podcaster will often point out that, you should charge whatever you need to charge, which I completely agree with.
Yep.
And he's speaking to other chefs and restaurant owners, like just charge whatever. You should be able to cover your costs. And I agree with that. But there's also that argument that, like, tech bros will pay for it because they make lots of money. And I'm here to tell you, as a person who dated tech bros for a long ass time, tech bros eat Domino's pizza. They eat Taco Bell. They do not fucking give a shit. They're not out there trying to eat experimental cuisine. That's a different audience, and that audience may or may not be paid, Like, it's not, if you're relying on your tech bros and their salaries, they're not going to show up.
Exactly.
I don't think so. They don't care.
And tech bros are at Eat Stove restaurants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing bad about it. Right.
Yeah. No offense to any tech bros who are listening.
It's just not
They're
in there.
sitting at the table with us. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, but
You may be tech, but you're not a bro.
But I 100% agree. That was what I was going to say, that the tech influx has impacted our food scene in a negative way as well.
Yeah.
Not because all right, I'm throwing myself in there.
Too late.
Yeah, not because we aren't as adventurous, but I think it's a different bubble, right?
Yeah.
And people aren't willing to step out of their bubble as much. And not that they live to work, but they're probably forced to.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like not all
sure.
tech workers. Obviously, I worked for Microsoft for years and years, and I was curious about food. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
not a
of course.
monolith, but in
Exactly.
general, I don't think you can rely on that influx of cash to pay
Yeah.
for your experimental cuisine. I want you to have your experimental cuisine, but
Yeah.
maybe not. You might not sell it in the Amazon Village.
Right. It's just that the priorities are different. Like the thing I always tell people is, if you're saying that they can afford it, it's just they don't really want to.
They don't care.
If you were making fine apparel, you would be frustrated at people buying expensive tracksuits instead of being interested in your fine apparel. Like it's the same thing kind of across the board.
But yeah, I think the pop-up scene is that fresh breath of air kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
To the scene, because it takes care, or at least tries to address some of those exact issues, right? It's chefs are out there taking risks. They are doing interesting things which aren't necessarily traditional, right? Or what are expected based on how they look or where they're from, kind of thing, right? And it probably adds some kind of our response to the entire Portland food cart scene is our experimental chefs and bakers on the pop-up scene.
It occurs to me that not every American city has a pop-up scene or could support a pop-up scene. Like if you're in Omaha or something, do they have pop-ups there? I don't actually know. Seattle does have a pop-up scene that is thriving and is nurtured, but like if you tried it in Oklahoma City, would it work? I don't know.
No, interestingly, right? So I tried to figure that out because I wanted to figure out if there was a similar movement across the country, right? And while there's decent amount of interest or movement in the pop-up scene in San Francisco and New York and a bit in LA, they have lax or just more lenient laws in LA around like cottage food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then in Portland as well. Portland has some interesting pop-ups, but beyond that, there isn't as much.
No, really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder why.
But interestingly, I also looked at like some data geek and diving into the Eater 38 across all of Eater's editions.
Yeah.
Seattle stands out with like there's 7 of the 38 restaurants on the Seattle Eater list, or Eater 38 list, that are pop-up graduates.
Yeah.
Really?
That's 20%.
That's cool, yeah.
That's huge, right?
But do we know what percentage in the other cities were pop-ups? We just don't happen to know, right?
No, there are a couple. I tried
There
doing
were.
that. Yeah.
Oh,
So
you did
there
all the
are,
research.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, there are a couple here and there, but nothing as significant as Seattle.
I think it's worth pointing out here that as Eater freelancers, Mark and I know that until the recent reorg, and it may still be true, Eater had 3 different tiers for American cities, and Seattle is the third tier. We're on the lowest tier, and Portland is the second tier city. So it has to do with how much staff they're able to hire and just sort of the prestige of a food city. Seattle's at the bottom. Embarrassingly, enragingly, we were ranked at the bottom.
To be honest, we were in a great place at the start of the 21st century, and I think we can get back there.
Yes.
It's just a matter of how is it going to happen? What kind of support can places get, both from the public and also from the city government? I think that there are some good programs. Like I think Seattle Restored is a really great program
Absolutely.
from the city. I think we need more things like that.
Yeah.
And
to grapple up to the second tier. We'll get
So
there.
it's really interesting to see a Seattle Restored graduate. There are 2 of them that come to mind because they're pop-up hosts, and I know them personally as well. One's Mixed Pantry down in Belltown.
Right.
Yeah.
And while they feature an crazy amount of very interesting Asian pantry staples and condiments and stuff, they also host pop-ups and have great... Lisa from Bartlett has been there, and a bunch of other coffee and boba pop-ups as well. And then the other one is Anyang Super, which is a store-in-store in 2 locations.
Yeah.
One's right down in Osan Banchan,
Yeah.
and the other one's in Hood Famous.
On Hood Famous, yeah.
Right, and both of those are graduates of the Seattle Restore program, and now they host pop-ups at their space. So it's really nice to see like a lot of these, paying it forward and building community around it. It's
That's what
fascinating
we
to see
need.
that.
That's a great trend to see.
yeah, for sure.
And then the second topic we wanted to talk about, which I really like and was really interested to sort of research how I feel, is just you were mentioning, Edgar, the concept of the chef as a celebrity, and sometimes unwillingly as a celebrity. And maybe you didn't say if it's ethical, but this is what my mind went to. Like, is it ethical to really lift a chef up as a star when you're covering them, whether or not they want to be the focal point? Do you feel me? Like, sometimes I've written about chefs or chef owners who've been like, yes, it's me, ta-da, like I'm thrilled to be the star. And then just as often, they're not comfortable with being the focal point, and they want to point to their staff who, and they say it's a team effort. And we were just talking about how it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to just put the spotlight on the chef and the chef only.
Yeah, I think that might have grown out of maybe the Food Network, in the late 90s, kind of elevating these kinds of personalities. And then, last week, Jose was talking about the importance of telling a story, right? And I think that might sort of play into that a little bit, because, if you're going to tell a story, there needs to be a narrator, right?
Yeah.
And so then who is the narrator? It's going to be the chef
protagonist.
telling their story.
Yeah.
And so that kind of creates some star vibes, I think, in a way. It might be our job to suss out, how collaborative is this? How much of a one voice thing is this trickling down to the rest of the operation?
The barriers to gather an audience are also tremendously dropped, right? So I like how you brought it up as an unwilling celebrity,
Right.
but it could very much be a slippery slope of, hey, I was telling my story and to the 5 friends and family that I had on TikTok, and now I have a million followers.
Right,
Yeah.
for better or for worse.
Exactly, right, who are all interested in the
As-
XYZ that I do.
And as a food writer, that's just the format that we sort of naturally take to tell the story.
Yeah.
Like that's the template is who's the star? Fill in the protagonist. It's such and such. It's Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
He's in charge here. Like let's, adore him. But it's not always correct.
Yeah, I think you maybe even touched on the downside of it is that you sort of elevate these people who are very egotistical because it plays into that. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of some, like the stereotypical bad boy chef, and
Sure.
the guys like Gordon Ramsay, and we've had a few of these in this town, over the last 20 years.
We've had a
where
lot of like
just-
sex offender
which
chefs.
seems to be an industry that just attracts
Yeah.
the worst.
It's probably industry wide, but or nationwide.
Yeah, it is an industry that is reckoning with abusive practices.
Yeah, maybe we
Absolutely.
shouldn't be trying to be kingmakers out here for that reason.
No,
it makes
yeah.
them worse behavior.
Which is actually interesting that you said that I sometimes feel as in my small corner of the world of Seattle pop-ups, am I elevating somebody or somebody's craft that might be inauthentic or,
Yeah.
well, a sex offender?
A piece of shit.
Sure.
How are you going to teach these kids to swear if you don't swear? You're making us do it.
Yeah, that is sort of a requirement, right? To do the due diligence on who you're covering and
Right.
making sure that they aren't someone who has engaged in, uninvestigated criminal activity,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, you'd have to do so much research. Are we going to
Yeah.
look up mugshots? What are we going to do? Ethically, should we?
Yeah, and it gets slippery too because sometimes you try to do that research and someone will say like, "Well, they aren't a criminal or anything, but like they're kind of a jerk," and you're
Right.
like, "Well, I don't know if I'm covering whether or not I want to hang out with them." It's
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, it's also subject.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
think they're a
exactly.
jerk? Are they authentically a jerk?
Would I think that? Yeah,
Who
knows?
is to say?
Yeah, and who are we to say?
Yeah, oh, we are the food writers.
Yeah.
Evidently, someone gave us a fucking platform. I do think it's important to do research on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, what you discover, first of all, is it ethical to be like, here is the protagonist of the story versus the kitchen staff who actually makes the food and the servers and, all of that, the bartenders. And then once you've decided, okay, that's the format that my story is going to take, I better research everything this person's ever said in their entire life.
What they said
Right.
on LiveJournal.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Go find their live journal. Yeah. Embarrassing. I don't want anyone to find my live journal. I'll say that right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's all to say that we're always thinking about how to be responsible in the coverage, and it's sort of a moving target in a way. There's never, and by moving target, I think I mean that there just isn't a concrete answer. Like,
Right.
what's the best possible way? And you're kind of always chasing it.
I think that extends to diners too, right? Not
Yeah.
just food writers. Sure, you folks have a platform to say things, but diners vote with their dollars every day, right?
Yeah.
Are they heading to Toulouse Petit every day?
Oh my God. I've tried so hard not to talk about
I
Toulouse
know.
Petit. So hard.
It feels like a feed the troll
And to
scenario.
this day, I am trying not to talk about
Yeah.
Toulouse Petit. If I had a drink in me, y'all would hear what I have to say about Toulouse Petit.
The Dinnernet After Dark.
Someday, we should go get trashed and do an episode. Speaking of getting trashed, should we do Thanks I Ate It? Because I
Let's-
only went to bars this week.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to hear.
I went to Darkolinos with Mark DeJoy and Marcus Ilario.
Oh yeah, you got to talk about that drink you had.
I had a lovely drink. I mean, it wasn't complicated. It was essentially a highball. It was so I remembered having an Aperol Spritz there, and it was a shitty, drizzly day. And I was like, what if I got a sunny little Aperol Spritz? And it was orange and bright, like the sun. And the bartender said, we also have a limoncello Spritz. And I think it was Caravello, brand limoncello. I don't remember the brand, but it lit up my life. It was
Yeah.
like a light bulb. It was just limoncello and Prosecco, and it was so freaking delicious. And I made Mark drink a bunch of it, and then I got another one.
Yeah, it
It's
wasn't.
just lovely and light.
Yeah, it wasn't fancy limoncello, but that's sort of you don't want to mix the fancy.
No, you don't want to mix it anyway.
limoncello, right?
Totally.
So to me, it worked really perfectly.
Yeah, and then I got the sausage and pepper sandwich, which was delicious and was just like a mountain of sautéed peppers and onions over a very high quality Italian sausage. I will say the bread, while high quality and delicious, was very sturdy. And maybe they gave me a knife and I was just like, great, I'll take this knife and I'll cut it in half. And then like the hinge of the bun dissolved. And then I just had like several pieces of bread and a beautiful sausage and all of the peppers and onions. So I had to sort of eat it manually after that, but still incredibly delicious on their new renovated Italian-American menu at Darcolino's.
Did they drop the pasta?
No. They have it, but it's like clam sauce, vodka sauce.
Didn't they already also have a spot at one of the little woodies that and that they shut down relatively quickly, right?
Yeah.
Green Lake?
So it was in Tangletown, Green Lake, that
right?
sort of micro neighborhood in Green Lake. And what they did was they shut that down and moved the chef there to the Darcolino's in Pioneer Square.
Okay.
And so that's sort of where the menu shift is coming from. He's kind of dialing in this crafty Italian-American menu. So it's more casual, but it's also very conscientiously, because what he was doing over at the Green Lake Darcolino's wasn't the same as the Pioneer Square Darcolino's. It was more compact and more visually composed. And it was very lovely pasta, but I think that it's sort of the neighborhood. You never know if the neighborhood's going to respond the way you think they will, and I don't think they quite did. I'm looking forward to trying that pasta now, especially with chicken parmesan. I mean, that's my wheelhouse.
Darcolino's was like the only restaurant food I ate other than the wedding catered by Jackalope. I went to Joe's Bar.
Nice.
So it was raining a lot and we were killing time. Stephen used to work across the street from Joe's Bar, which the local people call Stabby Joe's. And it used to be like a somewhat dangerous place. Seattle did not have a lot of dangerous bars.
Right.
It was like that spot and the Turf were really the only truly questionable spots.
True.
But then they did like an overhaul and put nice wood paneling up. And, there's still pull tabs on the floor, but it's like not dangerous.
Yeah,
Stephen recalled like watching a guy pull the bathroom door off its hinges and throw it out of the way because he was like on fentanyl or PCP or something, and they couldn't figure out how to like open the door. So he just pulled it off and threw it down the hall.
When was that?
Was like probably 2005 when he was first working in the neighborhood.
Stabby Joe's era.
Stabby Joe's. He said the first time I went in there, I immediately saw a pregnant woman smoking at the bar. I was like, yeah, that describes it perfectly.
Yeah,
poetic.
That's a tableau for sure.
Yeah, I went there in Darcolino's.
I went to Tacos Extranjeros
Nice.
because they just reopened over at Fair Isle Brewing. They're there on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I talked about them on the old podcast because they are doing a trompo, so like al pastor carved from the spit, and to me, it's the best.
The owners have some sort of fine dining pedigree, right? They come from a Michelin universe.
From Michelin kind of environments.
Which I love. I love having Michelin training and then getting a trompo.
Exactly.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Or a full roasted lamb from Hamdi.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had an alambre burrito. And so that was al pastor with sauteed peppers and onions with crazy good refried beans. I tried to ask him how they did the refried beans because they were so good, and he wouldn't tell me. I could tell he was no. That was the first
vegetarian?
The first thing I asked was, is there lard in this? Because this is so creamy and great. And he said, nope, no lard, no animal fat in it at all. And I said, oh, how did you do this? And he was like, yeah, it's great, right?
Yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You like that, don't you?
Yeah, and I tried one more time.
Talk about it on your podcast, shithead.
Exactly. So that's a trade secret, I think. That's where the Michelin star technique gets you. Apply it to beans,
5 cubes of butter.
I mean, and it sounds
pounds.
And I feel a little bit silly, like rapturizing about beans, but like
if it deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, they say sometimes the simple things are best.
People say beans prevent cancer, and they don't know why. But if your diet is full of beans, like in parts of the world where people eat beans every single day, very low cancer incidence.
I'll take it.
That's why you like them.
Get like the booze beans equilibrium happening.
Yeah, like cancel each other out. Yeah,
exactly.
Perfect. You'll live forever.
Yeah, but that burrito was fantastic. I mean, it's not like super fancy food. It's just really stick to your ribs. I think I was talking to Brendan. He said there was a term they used to use called good eaten food.
And I like it.
And it's
say that back home in Fairbanks.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah, and that's what that is. I also went to Backyard Bagels, like I mentioned earlier. So I had my sort of litmus test bagel for, what it's worth is an everything bagel, and then I want some scallion cream cheese with it. So that's what I got. What I'm always hoping for with the everything bagel is that it has caraway.
Yes.
It can be good without caraway, but it's called an everything bagel, so it needs to have everything. It can't be without caraway. It's an almost everything bagel. Sure. And so when I first saw it, I thought at first glance I thought it didn't, but then I realized they use black caraway, and so that looks different, but it's there.
It's there. Okay.
And it was fantastic. I loved that bagel. It was so good. If you like bagels, that's a recommend.
Edgar, did you eat anything this week?
Yeah, earlier this week or late last week I went to Cafe Lolo, which a pop up in the farmers markets mostly, but they did a residency for a couple of weeks in Three Sacksville, Roosevelt or Ramena, Roosevelt, ish area, and they had fantastic food there, great pastas and great appetizers as well. They had a pasta casarecce, I think, with pork, with braised pork. It was delicious.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of food? Italian?
Italian.
Okay. I haven't heard it. Lolo or Lola?
Lolo. L-O-L-O.
Okay.
Lolo.
Nice.
I want it.
I went to Seabird too on Saturday. They changed the menu over there, and so I'm working on the seafood map update, and so I needed to know what the menu is now. And so what made me very excited was that they have the OG crab toast that Alex Jackson made for oyster cellar that I loved so much. It's the sourdough focaccia with Dungeness crab, tonado, and then they have a grana padano mousse there.
Wow.
At oyster cellar, it was originally a fonduta.
That's right.
Which is mascarpone and fontina. And that grana padano mousse is very similar to that. Now, at oyster cellar, he's replaced the fonduta with pimento cheese, and I love that too.
Yeah.
It's really good. But if you've had the fonduta first, you miss it.
Okay.
But now the fact that I can get the original feeling version at Seabird, and it makes me appreciate the crab toast at oyster cellar with a pimento now.
Yes. Well, you have to take a boat to get one of them, and the other one you don't. So
I like going over there. It's hard to get over there as often as I would like to, just because you kind of have to make a. You don't have to, but it makes more sense to make a day of it.
Yeah.
If you go to
We're talking about Bainbridge Island. If anyone doesn't know where Seabird is.
But yeah, they also had a really great wild Alaskan Red King salmon there, which had 3 ways of doing parsnips. So there was like
I love parsnips.
Right?
I'm going to grow them in my yard, and we'll just be overflowing with parsnips.
I thought again.
Fall, right? Isn't it a fall?
Maybe.
Harvest? I don't know.
I don't know. Did you just ruin my idea? I don't know. I love parsnips. I'm going to buy them and not grow them.
I thought it made me think back to our roast carrot mishap of earlier, because there were these deeply smoked fire roasted parsnips with that. And then there was a brown butter parsnip puree. And then there were these thicker strips of fried parsnips that were crispy on top.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was gorgeous.
Parsnip 3-way.
I wrote about the carrot misgiving in Seattle Mag this week when I wrote about
Did you
Drumlin.
really?
Yeah. Well, I was like scared. I was like, I was trepidatious to order the carrots. But Chef Sapphire Cat was like, I stand by these carrots, and was right to do so.
Yeah.
But, I also stopped by Radiator Whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
I was just walking around being a native tourist.
Yeah.
I was being a tourist in my own town through Pike Place, and you had recommended the Pike Place Bar and Grill, and I went up there and kind of skulked around and looked in there, and yes, it is frozen in 1987, which is attractive, but I was just like, I don't want to eat any of the things.
That's a place to drink at.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't want any of these boring drinks, but I couldn't think of the drink I wanted. I wanted a place with a cool craft cocktail menu, so I went to Radiator Whiskey, and I got a very nice drink. All the drinks were named after tracks of certain bands. I think they were all metal bands, and I got the one that was called Triad, which is a Tool song. See, I'm a closet Tool fan, and I believe it had 4 Roses, mezcal. It had a black pepper tincture. It had chocharo, amaro, and I don't remember what else, but it was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just sat like a solo, like an elderly drunkard. I was like, I'm the female Emmett Watson skulking around my place, drinking solo and writing in my notebook. And it was a good feeling.
Yeah.
Beautiful spot.
Pike Place Bar and Grill is great if you want a divey bar experience, but if you want a more crafty drink,
It's just
Radiator is so
what
much
I was
better.
in the mood for.
Totally.
I'll also go to Pike Place Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks, I drank it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. All I did was drink this week.
Yeah, I was in Woodinville at this new rice winery called Rain Brew.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which
They're on my
is-
to-do list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was delicious.
Okay.
Yeah, they soft opened a week and a half or 2 weeks ago.
Great.
Small bar snacks. I had a dried fish, which was great, like Korean style dried fish. Sampled a bunch of their magolis, a clarified one called yakju, and an unclarified one called
Great.
kakju. Bought a couple of bottles.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All around delicious.
What was the
stuff.
space like?
Oh, it's tiny.
It's little.
Yeah, it's really small, and the brewery is behind, or winery is right there as well. So very small, very utilitarian kind of thing.
Okay.
But good drinks, good food.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. They're on one of my many to-do lists somewhere, but it sounds great.
It
Yeah.
was nice.
Yeah.
Any plugs that we should add before we wrap up?
I think my seafood map is going to publish on either on Tuesday when this episode comes out, or maybe later in the week. I'm not sure how long the editing queue is right now.
I think it dropped at noon today.
It already did.
Yeah, I think it did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Wow,
think it's
you're
something like that.
hardcore.
Oh, yeah, I was. Well, I mean, I was going to make a joke about how the article was perfect, so it doesn't need to be edited. So it
Well, it works.
evidently.
My story on Tarika Waters, which is not food but art, probably won't run until next week.
Yeah.
But I think my drumlin story will run this week, and I'm working on a piece about Lennox as well.
Oh, cool.
Probably run at the end of the week, maybe if I finish it. And also my cocktail column, which is super late, will also run in The Stranger at some point.
Yeah.
That's all I got. What about you? Do you have just events coming up that you want to plug that you are excited about?
What am I excited about?
You're talking about Hamdi having the lamb
oh
roast.
yeah. How did I forget that? Right? Yeah. So Hamdi is going back to, well, for a day at least, to their pop-up days where they would, where they had this entire spit that Brendan built for them.
Oh, Brenda built that.
Yeah. And so they roast a whole lamb, and it's 3 courses, 2 of which are lamb and a dessert. And it's delicious. We used to have lines out at the door when they did this every summer for the past few years. And they're doing it on the 30th of March. It's the last Sunday of March.
Okay.
But get your tickets now.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Right. The event is to buy the ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just going to do it in their parking lot.
In the parking lot.
Cool. That's
That's so
perfect.
cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe the weather will be nice. And maybe, I'll still go.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
That's something to put on the calendar for sure.
Yeah. I think that'll do it for this week. Next week, we have the man, Colonel Long, who we talk about all the time. And he's going to be talking about getting a James Beard nomination for his bar program at Sopon.
Yeah, and probably.
Among other things.
Yeah, he's got that other venture with Jose too, so I'm excited to hear more about that.
They'll probably talk about Chubby Brown Boys also.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Edgar.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thanks for
Edgar.
having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a joy. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, until next time, everyone.